I think it's the height of naivete to believe that, giving free stuff away or just, taxing the rich more is going to solve the problem. But they're looking for a quick fix. The bigger problem amongst this millennial group is that they're not upset enough about the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel statements that Mamdani has made.
What's the goal of the whole thing that you're engaged in? Because depending on where that you plant that flag, everything else to get there changes, right? Yeah. Some people, it doesn't even, when we ask that question, like they never even thought of it before, it's just, I'm trying to.
I think about it every day. I think Judaism has been marketed as a bunch of rituals and laws that if you're a religious Jew, you do. And if you're not a religious Jew, you take whatever, kind of you find meaningful or not. It's not really been presented as this could really unlock the greatest depth, brilliance, wisdom, and spiritual connection that you could ever want to have in life.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
This is the Jew Function, and we're very, very happy to have with us today Rabbi Mark Wildes. And he's obviously a rabbi, but he's much more than that. He's actually also a writer. He's a connector, if you will. I follow his the work that he does, and I listened to a few episodes of his podcast, and actually the last episode you had with Chai Davidai, right, about the book that you wrote, and Chai Davidai was on this show actually last year.
Oh, great! The Jewish experience.
The Jewish experience, exactly, which helps kind of bridge maybe the old traditions with the needs and desires and questions of young Jews, right? I think they call you the millennial rabbi.
That was actually a very good description. Yeah, I used to be called the millennial rabbi. I don't know how much longer I can continue to be called that. I told you I became a grandfather. So, and I'm trying to come up with a name. I could be Zaidi, like my father, blessed memory, was, but I feel like that's just going to make me too old and unrelatable to my 20s and 30s, my students, who are like my kids' age now.
Amazing. Yeah. When I saw your pictures, I thought you were like 40 or something. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
They have good Wildes genes.
Yeah, exactly. So good genes. So, Sydney Sweeney has good genes. You have good genes. Everyone's good genes today.
What's going on in New York, first of all? Can we ask you?
Yeah, New York's please. Good. New York has not, it's still here. We're still here. It's amazing.
The
Mamdani became mayor.
Just the election happened, but not the term.
Nothing, the police still say hello to you in the morning. And I'm a little concerned about things. Obviously, I was not happy about the election, but I'm an optimist, and I think that there's a greater plan. I wish I'm only a rabbi, not a prophet, so I can't pretend that I know the greater and the bigger plan. But good
news, we do. So we'll get into that.
Oh, good. Somebody has
here's the main thing. So when you look at the to everyone who wants to know, we're talking about the New York mayoral election. Zoran Mamdani just won, and he wants to divest from anything that New York has invested in the state of Israel. Also wants to reduce police. Also wants to be lighter on crime and things like that.
Globalized intifada,
couple of things. Yeah, but it turns out that it looks like the demographic that, first of all, it looks like about a third of the Jews, if I'm correct, voted for him, and also mostly not that you're responsible, but your demographic, that millennial, the young people who are probably saying to themselves, yeah, my rent is too high. Yeah, I don't have faith anymore in the old politicians who are full of all kind of corruptions. I want life to be better for people. So the impetus you can't really blame. The execution we can find fault with, but these are your people, right? These are the people that you've been working with, this millennials and Jews. So can you tell us who these people are and what's going on inside of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think you characterized it correctly. You're giving them, the proper benefit of the doubt that they're looking to better their situation. I think there was some statistic that by the age of 30, like half of Americans were married and had a home by the age of 30, like in the 1950s,
right.
1950s, 1960s. And now so much of that has changed, and people coming out with a lot of student debt, and they are not making enough money to pay the crazy rent because it's impossible to live. I mean, half of my students don't live in Manhattan anymore. They live in New Jersey and Queens and other parts because it's just become so unaffordable. So there's that legitimate need. I think it's the height of naivete to believe that giving free stuff away or just taxing the rich more is going to solve the problem. But they're looking for a quick fix. The bigger problem amongst this millennial group is that they're not upset enough about the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel statements that Mandami has made. I don't think they don't care, but I think they make the same chiluk, the same distinction between anti-Israelism and anti-Semitism as Mandami, and they bought into that distinction. They believe that you can be against Israel and against what Israel is doing to the Palestinians, which they perceive as wrong and as evil and as occupying. How else can you explain young people, so many young people being against Israel's, right to defend herself, because they're defending, they're an occupying force in their minds, and an occupying force does not have the moral right to defend itself. It should just simply give back the territory that people feel the Palestinians were entitled to, and the Jews, from the colonialists from Europe just usurped. And unfortunately, they bought into this narrative. That's the most upsetting thing about the election of Mandami, not just that we have an anti-Israel, anti-Semite in power in New York City, the most important city in the country, is that too many young people voted him in because they bought into this false narrative, what I would imagine you two consider a false narrative about Israel. That's what disturbs me. Now, I'm doing my part. Anyone who walks into MJE will get hit over the head in a very nice and I believe open way to discuss why that is a false narrative and why Jews have been there and all of the opportunities the Palestinians have been offered by Israel again and again and again to have peace, and there's nothing more that the Jewish people throughout the world, Israel and the diaspora, want than to live side by side in peace with the Palestinians. Very few Jews want them out completely. They just want, they want to live, next door to someone that's not hostile to them. So yeah.
Just on that, I want to, because obviously many guests who come here and support Israel, even whether they agree with every policy or disagree. I mean, nobody agrees with everything, everybody else does, let alone an entire state and government and all the rest of it. What alarmed me, what started to get into my head is that people are so disconnected from many other aspects. Put Israel aside. Let's say Israel is too contentious. Okay, put it aside. But the history of just Islam, the aspirations of Muslims, especially extreme Muslims, but also all other Muslims, the foundations on which this religion was created. And we're not even talking about, in the broader picture of it, how does it fit into the bigger play? We also have an explanation for that as well. But just again, if you did some research into that,
but they don't. And that's
tribal societies in the Middle East. Just understand the dynamics. Come out of the library and actually deal with realities.
You're pointing out something so important. So that's the other aspect I didn't touch on, which I appreciate you bringing up. If you have what I just said, plus you're getting your history from TikTok, and there is this culture of not checking what people say anymore. It's a very dangerous combination. What we try to do at MJE is educate, and we try to be as neutral as possible, and we try to be as dispassionate about presenting what we believe is the history. Like if you just said And there are distinctions between more mainstream Islam and jihadist Islam. And, but there are a lot of young people are learning, but it takes them a little while. And
Mark,
then,
how do you get them in the door though? Like, suppose if you get them in, you can talk to them,
right.
And maybe also just having the experience of sitting around the Shabbat table and singing.
Yeah.
We do some events a couple times a year. And for us, we've been doing this for so many years and we're always together. But a lot of people who come to our events, it's the first time they ever sat around a bonfire and sang songs. And you can see they're just like in shock. Like someone puts their arms around their shoulder and you're singing. For us, it's so second nature already.
Yeah.
Somebody who comes to the Shabbat table and starts singing and like someone's offering them food and everyone's smiling and no one's, it's the experience everybody wants to feel, right?
Yeah.
So once you get them in, probably a lot of them are in, oh, I didn't know this is what my people do or this is what it's about. But how do you get them in the door?
Well, so before just take half a step back for us, because not everybody knows what MJE is. So just tell us how do you come about that?
Well, I can.
Who doesn't know?
They're both. Who doesn't know? They're actually both the same question, because how do you get them in, and what is MGE are really one and the same. I started MGE 27 years ago, August of '98, because, Seth, of what you just brought up, I didn't feel there's enough Jews being brought in. There's just not enough of our brothers and sisters sitting around the Shabbat table or around the campfire at a Saturday night kumzit. So I just started an organization that promoted programming for 20s and 30s, ski retreats, spring retreats, trips to Israel, Shabbat meals. I would say a Shabbat meal, I appreciate you bringing it up, is still probably the most impactful experience and cost-effective, I would say. Rabbi Riskin, my teacher, he should live be well, used to say, for the price of a chicken, you could save a Jew, and
much more affordable than a ski trip.
Oh my God, you have no idea. The ski trips are great, and we sell out every year a month in advance. And you get that kumzitz moment on Saturday night, after spending a beautiful Shabbat and after skiing on Friday, and then it's the best. But yeah, it's money, and you have to subsidize. So that's part of my answer to you. Make stuff cheap. But not so cheap that you're giving it away for nothing. I'm against the whole birthright. I love birthright, and I do birthright trips all the time. But birthright and many other people in my field of outreach have succumbed to the whole let's give it all away. And then you have people who are coming from means and are not being asked to give back, and if you don't have any skin in the game and you're not asked to give something, it's not going to last very long. But, like anything else, it's a hook. So I started MGE August 98 to basically engage our less affiliated Jewish brothers and sisters. I would say my mother of blessed memory and my father are probably my two greatest inspiring agents for this. We had an expanding Shabbat table growing up in my home. I'm from Forest Hills, Queens. And both my parents were children of refugees. My mother's side from Germany, and my father's side from Poland, Bialystok, and they loved this country, and they loved the Jewish community, and they helped build it right away. And my brother and I were raised to be very civic-minded, and we can make a difference, and we all worked for our local members of Congress and our senators, my brother's in politics, and we all became lawyers. That was just a rite of passage. I guess that's the Jewish part of us. Whatever we were going to do, you have to have the tools, the thinking tools, to be able to implement whatever it is whatever change you want to make. And it just took off. It was an experiment for the first couple of years. And then, we have about 20,000 to 25,000 attendees a year, depending on the year, who are coming through our doors for events and classes and retreats and seminars. And it doesn't take very long once somebody starts coming to A, feel the love of their Jewish brothers and sisters, and B, Leo, what you were just saying before, of learning some of the basics of history. I mean, it's unbelievable. When when this thing started, October 7th, I gave a series of classes on just the history of what's been happening the last 20 years, from the disengagement till today. And the level of ignorance is just massive. And it's hard to reconcile with the level of education. If I go around, I'm teaching Wednesday nights are big night of classes. So I'll have 25, 30 people sitting in my classroom. If I went around, the average level of education in that room is a master's to a doctorate to a law degree. Everybody, we are such a literate and educated people, but yet when it comes to our own history and our own philosophy and our own Jewish culture and Torah, it's sad a little. And yeah, please go ahead. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote the book also.
Yeah. Let's get into that. Here's like a main point, and we've discovered that we have to, Leo and I discovered that, and we're talking to so many people in this forum, we have to find out what's the main goal, Mark. What's the goal of the whole thing that you're engaged in? Because depending on where that you plant that flag, everything else to get there changes. Right. Yeah. Some people, it doesn't even, when we ask that question, like they never even thought of it before, it's just, I'm trying to.
I think about it every day.
Maybe, hold on. Let's tease it out just a little longer. Okay. Maybe before you tell us about the goal, maybe answer the question that we ask everybody who comes on the show. And that is, what is a Jew? Who is a Jew? What is a Jew? How would you define a Jew to an alien who landed here and saw this, small, tiny group of people that yields so much influence and draws so much attention? And what's up with that group? Who are they? What are they about?
So and by the way, you guys are a really good yin yang. You are, because you're teasing out the same things just from different angles. The Jew is that unique creature that you can say was chosen or that chose. Okay, because I heard this from my teacher, Rabbi Riskin. It's, when God comes to Abraham and says, Lech Lecha, that was only after Abraham had already pursued God. And that's my understanding of the chosenness doctrine.
No, also the word in Hebrew, Ambchira, doesn't imply, that word can mean that you have to choose every day, or that you were chosen, or maybe both. So
yeah, it's a relationship. If you don't choose Hashem, you don't get chosen. And the only reason I think Hashem came to the Jews to reveal his magnum opus on wisdom for the world, on how people should live or think, and chose the Jewish peoples because we already had a relationship with him. And I think that's actually true to the Rambam, to Maimonides' perspective. He doesn't say this explicitly, but I believe it's consistent with his approach. But that creature, that unique creature that was either chosen or elected to be the messenger for God's word, I would say his light in this physical world. That's who we are. We are supposed to be sharing some of the divine in an otherwise physical world.
Okay, so lovely, because it's very clear to you and you're able to articulate that. So then we usually don't get to this part then. What does that look like? What would that mean to share God's light in the world? What would a world look like where the Jewish people shared God's light with the world?
I mean, I think we've done some of it. I think we can take a little credit. The Rambam Maimonides himself wrote that Christianity and Islam, to some degree, as problematic as some of its tenets are for the Rambam and other thinkers, it nonetheless created a certain vocabulary and a certain acceptance of certain basic Jewish concepts, even if they've been distorted or changed or replaced by these different traditions. So what that would look like, to answer your question, is us reflecting a certain kind of wisdom, a certain spiritual wisdom, to teach and share. But it's not teaching from, we're here, the rest of the world is over here, we somehow have mastered this. We're all people, we're all human, we all share the same, just not planet, but we share some of the same DNA that we are bringing to the rest of humanity, this gift. And that's the gift of the Torah. And that is its various laws and traditions and insights and wisdom as to how to access spirituality in a physical world and how to use the physical world towards a connection with something greater and living that kind of life and teaching, sharing with the rest of humanity how we can access a spiritual connection and really have the greatest possible joy, happiness, and purpose. Because happiness really comes from leading, I believe, a life of meaning and purpose. And there's nothing more meaningful than living in accordance with the purpose of your creation. And the
who would not want what you just described? I think everybody would want what you just described. I mean, there's people who are there's people who are born from birth to just say, kill the Jew, kill the Jew. Let's leave them to the side. Yeah. We'll save them for the final correction. But most people in that millennial group, for example, what you just described is so beautiful. Who would not want that?
And I think many people would want to. I don't think we've done a great job marketing that, to be honest. I think Judaism has been marketed as a bunch of rituals and laws that if you're a religious Jew, you do. And if you're not a religious Jew, you take whatever, kind of you find meaningful or not. It's not really been presented as this could really unlock the greatest depth, brilliance, wisdom, and spiritual connection that you could ever want to have in life. And I think first of all, we have to see it that way. If we, the practitioners, or we, the teachers, or those who are sharing this wisdom, don't view it that way, then certainly our students and our colleagues are not going to see it that way. But, it wasn't like God was lonely and needed some people to worship him and to make God feel good about him being the king. And now, he sort of, is entertained by watching us bump into each other, and here's something that could help fix your little problems. No, Hashem, we believe, and the Kabbalists teach, that is the ultimate giver and wanted to share some of his goodness. That's where the word good comes from. It comes from God. Because there was this ancient idea in many civilizations that the greatest goodness can only come from being connected and associated with your source, with your creator. And to the degree that we can demonstrate that the Torah and its wisdom, and you don't have to be a Jew to have this, because the Torah was designed for all of humanity. It wasn't just designed for Jews. Now, the Jews have a particular role to play, and they were supposed to live a certain kind of life. But it's no different than, let's say, I'm not jealous of my friends who are Kohanim. They get to minister in the temple. They have certain laws and rituals that I don't. They have a different function. They have a different role. Unfortunately, we've allowed...
Don't you want to know what it looks like inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim?
We'll send him a picture later. What?
Yeah.
What you just finished the thought? You said we've allowed what?
We've allowed the rest of the world to think that Judaism is just for Jews, and that it's just about doing a bunch of things to please your maker, and that it's ultimately, something you do for someone else.
What I think, it's a good, description. I think there's another issue which when we started to delve into the sources, the Jewish sages, and there's a lot. Thank God the Jews have written a lot, still do. But when you start to look for like the internality of things, you find out that almost everything that was written in all our holy books, the Bible, even before the Bible, but the Bible and the Talmud and all of that, it's all of it has like an internal meaning, but we're sort of just reading on the surface. And we found, and Seth and I saw it, as we kind of like dug through the stuff, we found that we got a lot of the terminology off. Okay, like we sort of forgot the real meaning of some of the words, and we borrowed, as you said, we borrowed from, okay, God is someone up in the sky who's going to grant your wishes. Okay, good, that's God, and spirituality is this thing where you sit in inner peace. Okay, so that's spirituality, and we kind of lost touch with the inner meaning of those things. I'm curious, how do you, when you talk about, because I heard you speak about spirituality and the creator and all those things, how do you define those concepts to people, or you just let whatever intuitively people feel about it?
No, I think you have to explain as best as you can, and I think there's certain works that do a better job of it. I don't know if you've ever read Rabbi David Aaron's any of his books or his teachings. He does a really good job of explaining basic Kabbalistic terminology. And when you read his books, and or just Tanya, I taught for the last 2 years, Rav Shneur Zalman Lialdi's book of Tanya, and you start really picking up on this phrase in the prayer book. We're saying to express a certain idea, and this mitzvah brings this certain kind of spiritual energy into the world. And we're doing these things because they matter. They impact the world. They bring the world back to its original purpose of creation. It starts resonating with people. And it's interesting, you were asking me about millennials before. Millennials are really attracted to this kind of vocabulary, this kind of literature, this kind of thinking. It used to be when I started out in outreach like 30 years ago, it was more all about the rational kind of stuff. And I have a lot of that in my book too, where I try to make a rational case for the existence of God and a rational case that this Torah comes from God. Because there are still people, more math science types sitting in the classroom for whom a lot of this spiritual mumble jumble is not going to resonate. And that's why it really depends who you're talking to. You really have to figure out a language that's going to resonate with your audience. So that's why in the first chapter in the book, when I talk about God, I talk about finding God from without. And then I talk about finding God from within. And finding God from without is more looking at science and nature and seeing the complexity of the universe and human anatomy and asking ourselves, how can this complexity have evolved if there wasn't some kind of original cause? Or looking at Jewish history. I think the greatest evidence of something beyond us is the fact that the three of us are having this conversation right here, right now. Because by all intents purposes, we should not exist. There's no other minority group that's living amongst the majority culture for so long in so many hostile environments and either not been physically annihilated or culturally assimilated. Now, we've come really close to both, but neither has actually happened.
There's a thing, in the, I'm on X, that's where I get my news. And you see a lot like, they've been kicked out of, you guys have been kicked out of, hundreds of countries. Don't we realize there's something wrong with these people? If we imagine that dust has been evolving for 14 billion years in order to reach dvekut with the creator, with that bestowing endless force. So that is not a straightforward. I mean, it's not straightforward to open a business. It's not straightforward to just, find a parking spot on the Upper West Side. Nothing is straightforward. So to imagine that we're going to take dust and allow it to, you see how this planet evolved through fire and ice and upheaval and earthquakes. So if now you're going to say for humanity to actually get to the point where they become conscious, God-aware creatures or godlike creatures, of course, it's going to be a rough process, and you're going to be bounced around from all these sides. And it's interesting to now see people becoming aware of our history, but if they're only seeing it from the backside, and now we have some responsibility or something to start talking about it from the other side. Something recently happened in our community, in Leo, in our community, where somebody was, and it happened to the Alter Rebbe, right? So he was put in jail because of things he was in Russia, the first Chabad Rebbe. When through this negative stuff in the situation that Leo and I were connected to, through some kind of negative press and a negative lawsuit, you get more publicity than you could have ever gotten on your own. Like, it would have taken millions of dollars to get your name in the press that much and to get that many people to know about you. So we have this interesting thing where from the backside, like the nature reveals the backside, and then our responsibility is to flip it around and show the good. And so, guess what am I trying to get here? I'm still trying to push you to the goal. What your goal is now, especially with these young people, especially in a place like New York City.
Yeah. I mean, my goal ultimately is to inspire Jewish pride. We're coming up on
one more thing, and to turn around, like all these things are being revealed about Israel, being said about Israel. All these anti-Semitic things are happening in New York. So now the Jews are in everyone's mouth. Everyone, nobody, not the whole world was talking about the Jews 10 years ago. Now everyone's talking about the Jews. We could have never paid for this kind of press. But now, how do we flip it to the good? That's my
we have to show, to flip it to the good, we have to be able to show the positive side, because if the only exposure you have to your Judaism is listening to anti-Semitic, anti-Israel attacks, it's not going to inspire Jewish commitment. And my goal is to inspire Jewish commitment. That is my goal. A Jewish pride. I was just saying that Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, the blessed memory, coming up on his 5th yahrzeit, and he was all about inspiring Jewish pride, because you can't really get Jews to take their Judaism seriously and to become more committed to it if they're not proud of it. And if it's just the butt of other people's attack, it might raise an eyebrow and, like you're saying, give us a lot of good PR, but is it really going to inspire Jewish commitment, Jewish sharing this light and the spiritual wisdom with the rest? Because I mean, personally, that I'm bought into that. That's what I believe our purpose in creation is here, and that's why I started MG, was to get our less affiliated Jewish brothers and sisters on track with that. And how do you do that? By inspiring them with Jewish knowledge, Jewish wisdom, giving them pride in their Judaism. Because when you're proud of something, you want to practice it, you want to share it, you want to pass it on to your kids. If you're in the news all the time, but you're not so proud of your Judaism, then that's not something you're going to want to necessarily perpetuate.
So I wanna push on that a little bit, because we do get a lot of guests here who talk about Jewish pride, to really embrace it, get into it, understand the depth of it, really see the beauty, the power of it, all of it, and then that will fill you with pride, and this is good. But we see it more, all of that really as a stepping stone to something else, something greater, something deeper, and I think it has to do with the topic of this whole thing, which is anti-Semitism, to begin with. And so I want to take a little kind of sidestep to what we're talking about, and ask you if I imagine that you've experienced some form of anti-Semitism growing up, right, in New York. Maybe even like as an aside, maybe indirectly, but you've experienced it. And I'm wondering if in all of that and everything you wrote and everything you're doing with young Jews, do you have like a clear explanation of why there's anti-Semitism, and not just now, and not only in this form, but then throughout the entire Jewish history? What is this thing?
Well, I have experienced some forms of anti-Semitism, nothing too bad, nothing like our bubbies and zadies in Europe, but the one thing that I try to caution my students when it comes to anti-Semitism is getting too sucked into any quote-unquote reasons for anti-Semitism. Because once you start paying attention to the reason that someone else gives for why they hate the Jew, or why the Jew is justified to attack, or why Israel has no right to defend herself, which is the same, it's just a smokescreen. Rabbi Soloveitchik famously taught that the history of anti-Semitism, nobody attacked the Jew frontally. It was the temple, it was the Talmud, now it's Israel. There's always something, because anti-Semitism, in order for it to be successful, has to be appealing to the masses, and it has to be socially acceptable. And it's not socially acceptable to just hate somebody or hate a group of people because of their very ethnicity. So it has to be something. It has to be, the state of Israel is discriminating against the Palestinians. They're an occupying power. The temple was this. The Talmud.
And they killed Christ. They're revolutionaries.
There's always got to be. And I say to my students, like, you got to be careful with that, because Haman convinced Achashverosh to give him the Tabat HaMelech, to give him the royal insignia to kill the Jews of Persia. Why? Because their laws are different than our laws, and they're keeping separate and apart. What did Hitler say? Just the opposite. Hitler said their sons are marrying our daughters, their daughters are marrying our sons, they're taking over the banks, they're getting too close. So which is it?
Yeah,
is it because right, and that demonstrates that these are not reasons; these are just excuses.
Right, these are clothing. We agree.
It's right. I personally, I don't believe. I don't understand it. I don't believe it's rational, though. I don't believe the reason for anti-Semitism is rational. I don't have a logical explanation for it. I think it defies rationality. I think it is a freak of nature. It's part of nature that is somehow embedded in our history, and we just have to fight against it. And I'm concerned about giving a reason for it, because once you give a reason for it, now you're saying, oh, if I just fight against that reason, if I just become that which not, I mean, Theodor Herzl just said, they hate us because we're Jewish, so I'll assimilate. And then at the Dreyfus trial, it was demonstrated to him, it doesn't matter how much you assimilate, they're still going to hate you.
Of course.
So so I don't pretend theologically to know. I'm sorry if that's a very unsatisfying answer.
No. It's do you want to take it, Seth?
No, go ahead.
So I'm happy that you're in this place, because that's kind of the place where we were as well, right? I grew up in Israel. I couldn't understand that there is such a thing as anti-Semitism until I left Israel for moved to another country. Then I was suddenly a Jew. Right before that, I was just whatever. I lived my life in Israel. Then suddenly I was a Jew, and then there was something. And when you only focus on the reasons, you begin to see that they contradict, as you said. So it's irrational. They contradict. You begin to suspect that maybe those are just clothings, necessary stories people have to have in order to justify a certain feeling they have toward the Jews. So I started to ask, why people feel this way toward the Jews. Now, you can say, as some people have said on the show as well, it's a pathology, right? It's like, like depression, you have, lupus, you have anti-Semitism, it happens. You can contract it, if you're in the wrong circles, if depending on what you eat at home, right? You can get it.
And hope we don't have a vaccine, but that's the only issue, right?
Right. Now, and here's an interesting thing. So we went that far, but then when you start to look into again, as I said, the patterns that always preceded patterns of behavior of Jewish behavior and relationship between Jews and the societies they lived in before and some outbreak of a pogrom or expulsion or some drastic change of attitude, you see there was something that changed in how we related to one another. And when you read the words of Jewish sages, you also start to notice that they pay a lot of attention to that one rule in the Torah, right? Love your friend as yourself, being the great rule of the Torah, rule klal, right? Because it includes everything. And they start, and you see that for some reason, all of them, and I mean all of them, the Hasidim, the Mitnagdim, the sages of the Talmud, all the way back to, they all talk about the same thing, that this is somehow the main principle we have to live by, and yet it's the one that we don't always live by. It's the one
when you say we don't always live by, in terms of the way we relate to each other, Jew to Jew.
Yeah.
First of all, first and foremost, between us.
That's I think that's a very fair way of portraying what always preceded anti-Semitic incidents in Jewish history. It's always always
on the one hand.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, it's the greatest challenge in the world, because we two Jews, three opinions. We're never going to all agree. So we have to somehow figure out a way of staying as family and staying as loving brothers and sisters, even as we continue to vehemently disagree as to what Judaism is. How do you define a Jew?
So we have in the Zohar, for example, the father brings the white, the mother brings the red, the creator brings the soul. We have in the Talmud or maybe also the Zohar, that two verses contradict each other until the third one comes and resolves it, right? We're not going to do it by battling. Well, the third thing is what it's about. Not that the war's not meant to be won. Peace doesn't mean that I subjugate you, or peace doesn't mean that everybody just shaves off, all the differences.
Their beliefs, all their differences
peace
and beliefs,
is two opposite things. Like he who makes peace in the heaven, where fire and water can exist together, but the fire and water can't exist in this world. We need some kind of third thing. So this problem between the Jews to find some way above all of our differences, to find something bigger than all of our differences. Let's call it love. Let's call it, I don't know, unity. I don't know what we would call it, but we need to somehow find some goal. Let's call it love, that's bigger than all of the differences among us. And what we've found is that before each tragedy, like Leo said before, the Jews were killing each other, or were at each other's throats. I mean, look at all of our stories from look at the Maccabee situation. I mean, I thought growing up,
just look at October 6th. You don't have to go so far. I'm sorry to cut
No,
you
but
off.
it's right. October 6th, Maccabees, it's all the same.
I thought the Maccabees was against the Greeks, which I guess it was, but it was really against Hellenized Jews.
It was against Hellenized Jews. And that's the story they never taught us in Hebrew school, because it's not very pleasing to hear that this great, we're eating a sufganiyot and enjoying ourselves on Hanukkah, but it was almost a civil war between Jew and the next.
And between the second temple.
I'm just going to acknowledge that the two of you have hit on what I really believe is the one thing we could try to solve. And it's the one thing that has to get solved if we're going to, because we're not going to solve the anti-Semitism. And maybe you're both saying that this is like a symptom of some problem that we're having internally. And how do you do that? How do you do that when I feel so passionate?
Hoping you were going to tell us. That's why we invited you today. We keep asking everyone.
Listen,
I think you're correct that we have to find something we can all agree on. I thought it was Israel. And I think Israel can still be. But it's not, because, we have the fringes in the community, in both the right and on the left in the Jewish world, that are not with us on Israel.
We don't have to start with the fringes, though. Let's make it even easier. We don't need to start with every, I sometimes, I remember as a teenager, I would say go ahead. I can tell stories.
No. I think then if we don't have to get everybody, then let's make it Israel.
Let's start with the ones who
Because there's nothing, I think so many people would agree with this statement. What has happened that's more magnificent, miraculous, and life-saving for the Jewish people than the creation of the state of Israel in the last 2,000 years? I think we can all agree on that, minus maybe the fringes. I think a lot of religious Jews can get on board with that. And I think a lot of Jews that are not observant can get on board with that. They may hate Netanyahu, or this group may love Netanyahu, but we can all agree that Israel, and it doesn't have to be one thing. I don't think it's a good idea to put all of our eggs in that one basket. You mentioned love, but I do believe that we all want to live loving lives with our families and each other. And in order to have that, we need to have shalom bayis. You can't keep arguing with your family at the Thanksgiving table or at the Shabbat dinner. You have to be able to hang out with your family and want to be with them. And we're only going to hang out with the people that agree with us, that are living ideologically. I'm very disturbed on the way things have gone a little. I pride myself, and I raise my kids this way, to really value people irrespective of their beliefs, and to be able to see the soul within them, even if they choose not to see it themselves. And that applies to Jews and non-Jews alike. And I'm proud of my kids because they're comfortable around lots of other people. But even within my own children, within the community, everybody's got their little, and we're not spending enough time with each other. And if you don't spend enough time, if a very Orthodox Jew does not spend enough time with a very secular Jew, they're going to at some point be at odds, because the ignorance and the lack of feeling that you have for them. And if I don't spend time with a Satmar Jew, I'm just going to know, what am I going to know about Satmar Jews? I'm going to know that they're anti the state. I'm also going to know that they provide a lot of the Jewish hospitals with that free food, which is nice. They should be given credit for that. All of these Bikur Cholim rooms in A lot of the New York hospitals, they do it without any fanfare. They don't ask for anything. But that's all I'm going to know. I'm not going to have actually a relationship with someone whose name is David, who's a Satmar Yid, who raises his kids and wants a lot of the same things I want. So I would say, to give a little more practicality and ground this conversation a little more, is to say we need forums where we can get Jews that are very different to hang out with each other a little more, and not for the purpose of convincing the other who's correct. I'm in that business a little. I'm in the business of kiruv. I'm trying to bring people closer. I don't apologize for it. I tell people what I believe in, and I try to make an inspiring, compelling case for Torah and for observance. But I think we need just hanging out with each other more. Because I just think even if we just, and I'll tell you one quick story. I went on a bike run to Tuscany. It was beautiful. We got sponsored to go. It was like a fundraising trip. And my wife and I, not that we're the greatest bikers in the world, but 2 other people pulled out and we got their seats.
You didn't wear that tights shorts?
No, the spandex, no. By the way, the Satmar guy did, and we called him Satmar and spandex the whole time. It was the funniest thing in the world. It was a weird look. But the first day of the trip, the Satmar Jew, who named is Shmuley, he's now a friend, got into a fight with David from Australia. Okay. And David from Australia has a son who was in the army, and the Shmuley said something a little not so nice about the army and about the government, and David took it personally, and they were screaming and yelling at each other the first day of the trip.
Very Jewish.
Very Jewish. And the trip had everything in between, and ponytails and tattoos. It had everybody. It was great. We biked for 4 days with each other. Okay. And we had Shabbat together. And Shmuley and David were sitting next to each other at the Shabbos table. And nobody forced them to sit next to each other. They both chose to sit next to each other because they had 4 days of biking and hanging out. And something clicked. And Shmuley was not convinced that the army is a good thing. And David's not convinced that the Satmar Jews are living the right life either. They both just found some kind of shared humanity.
Yes.
And I think we need to have, we have conferences for everything, but think about the conferences. The modern Orthodox have their conference for this. Yeshiva University gets together with the RCA, and then we call it Achdus. I'm like, what Achdus? Everybody here is modern Orthodox. Yeah. And then we do this. Like, if we could, I'll tell you when there was Achdus. I have 2 boys. I have 4 kids behind her. Two of my sons made Aliyah. And my younger son is actually in the army now. And when my older son made Aliyah, I was in the middle of COVID. And he went to a COVID hotel because he got COVID. And he was in the hotel. He actually had a moral quandary at the end because he loved it so much. And it was like free food and everybody was hanging out. And he's a musician. He plays guitar. He's got this whole following, does these musical meditations in Israel. And he's like, Abba, is it okay if I stay here a little longer? I don't have it anymore, but it's a great way to breaking into the... Everybody was in that hotel and everybody fell in love with each other. Because they were just stuck in the same place for enough time. So I'm just wondering if we could affect something like that.
Yes.
Because I know what happens on my retreats, my ski retreats, when I bring people from very different types of backgrounds, and I have Orthodox people that are coming to help run the program, and then mostly people from conservative reform or unaffiliated that are participants in the program. Some people who just came to ski, they don't want to do any Shabbos. But by the end of one weekend, everybody is, like you said before, with the arm in arm and the campfire. If only there was a way to take Jews from different places and make them be together in one place, but not have this place called a concentration camp, right? That's what we're after. By the way, I have to tell you, Leo, when Rabbi Soloveitchik went to the 80th birthday party for Brengen of the late and great Lubavitch Rebbe, and they got to talk to each other, and they had seen each other a long time. They were friends, and they said, and the Rebbe said to him, so beautiful that the great-great-grandson of the Briskers is sitting with the great-great-grandson of the Balatanya, and the Hasidim and the Litvaks are for Brengenin together.
Yeah.
He said, that's not the only time, Rabbi Soloveitchik said, that Jews have been brought together. And he said exactly what you said. He said Hitler brought all those Jews together.
That's always what's happening, and that's what we're trying to prevent here on the Jew function. We're trying to remember the history, and learn the right lesson from history, not just to say, oh, never again, and strong army and pride. That's not the right lesson. That's a good tactic for survival.
Yeah, I applaud the two of you for forcing and pushing me into this corner, but to discuss the Achdus issue, because we need to come up with practical ways of promoting more love in the community, because we're never going to convince each other of our respective truths.
We don't have to. There's 12 Shvatim, right? It's like everywhere. You have Hillel and Shammai and Rav and Shmuel. I mean, it's always, there's 10 Sfirot. We don't need to all be the same. We didn't.
On the contrary, we need to show humanity that you can have contradictions within you. At the end of the day, you start this. You said in your book, you talk about the God outside, the God inside. Mm-hmm. In Kabbalah, man is a small world. Everything is happening inside of you. Even what you think is outside of you is also inside of you. It's all in your perception and how you perceive all reality. It's all quantum and it's beautiful, but it's just not your experience yet. It's you who have to reconcile all those different things you see on the outside, because they're parts of you. And even in your physical, fleshy body, you see these contradictions living side by side, right? Acid and base and soft tissue and hard tissue and all of that stuff, somehow miraculously not destroying each other to sustain this thing we call the human.
So can I ask you, I know you brought me on to, I don't know, for me to answer this question. So how would you deal with something like the pushback against the draft, which is creating such division in the community? Or how would you deal with, I just got off the phone with a student of mine who's becoming a Baal Tshuva. And he's becoming more observant, and he is unhappy with the kind of denominational setup here in the United States, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. He feels that he was led astray with a presentation of Judaism that was just, to use a more harsh term, corrupted.
Yeah. We had here Professor Shaul Magid was on the show. He was also saying he wasn't happy with his denominations and that younger Jews need a different, like there has to be more choices. I can't only be either an Orthodox or a Zionist or this. And that's fine. People have to find their place. But I think what we like to do is always take the, go higher. Whenever there's turbulence, what do you do when you fly? You go higher.
Get up beyond the clouds. Yeah,
exactly. You got to get above the turbulence. There's just no other way. There's always going to be turbulence.
Great image. Right.
There's always going to be turbulence, but those are just transition periods. You asked about the draft in Israel. I can tell you, for example, that rift between the secular and the religious is, it's historic. The irony is that when that law was established, Ben Gurion saw before him a few hundred families of refugees from the Holocaust. He was like, "Sure, you stay out of the army." He couldn't foresee that they're going to become such a force and join politics.
And by the way, I'm very sensitive. My son who's in the army now, he's a very religious kid. And he wants to stay observant. It's not so simple in the Israeli army.
No, for sure. So again, what you'll see is that everybody's going to have to take steps towards each other. There's a great image that we kind of, in our studies, we saw there's two donkeys that are tied together, and each one, there's a pile of hay on the right, pile of hay on the left. And each donkey is trying to pull right to his pile and eat, but he can't get anything. They have to come together and then walk together to one side, eat a little bit from the right, go together, eat a little from the left. That's the only way. So what we're seeing is just those labor pains of everybody's reluctantly taking a step. Okay, well, maybe we need to take part of this load, which is called serving the country, also externally. Because we live here, it's life. It's pikuach nefesh. You have to do that. There's nowhere does it say that a Jew, doesn't go to war. Of course, all the Jews in the Bible went to war. There's no question, right? And these guys will also have to take a step and say, "Oh, okay, now we have to get closer to these ideas, these the fundamental truth that are part of what makes us Jews, we can just say in the army, oh, here's a Bible, and we eat some kosher food, and that's it. Maybe there's other things that are important. So we'll all have to take steps toward one another. But I think it goes back to what Seth was saying originally, and there's a higher goal. And I think if we can convince each other, as you were saying, convince each other that there is a reason why we're being persecuted, why this pressure is inflicted upon us time and again, because we do have to reach a certain degree of a unity, right? Of all these opposites that will become an example. That's the light that the nations need. They don't know how to do it. When there's a conflict.
No, and we know that our enemies have been defeated again and again because of their lack of unity.
Right.
If you look at Milchemet HaShechrur and you look at 67, you look at all of these wars.
All of them.
We benefited from that. And
always.
I just think, it's like the chicken and the egg. I always say that, when two families get together and they have to plan a wedding for their kids, it's like the worst situation. They don't really know each other. And then they're forced to figure out how much money they're going to spend on what thing with all these differing tastes. It'd be so much better if the families knew each other and they hung out, they went out, and then they got together. And I feel like that's a metaphor for the Jewish people. We don't really know each other well. And then we have to sit down and and we have to work out these very thorny issues.
Yeah.
Without really being friends first.
Exactly. So what we're saying is, be friends. Let's be friends. Let's get closer. You don't have to, I don't have to like everything about you, but I have to love you. I have to care for you as if you are part of my family.
Yeah, and also, we don't, when it comes to these gigantic problems, if I love you, I don't want to hurt you. And if you love me, you don't want to hurt me. So we don't even need to, of course, we need lawyers. Of course, we need an army. I'll put that on the side for a minute. But if we increase the love, we don't have to go after every single problem, because if we care about each other, then I'm not looking over my shoulder that you're trying to hurt me. And most of the problems will go away. Well, there'll still be some left. There's no shortage of problems. Yeah. But if we start to love each other and care about each other, a lot of the problems that we have just go away, because we already are now just, we can easily figure that one out now. Right.
It's not two different sides. It's one family trying to stay together, basically. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you one little example of that, on going back to the thorny draft issue. Sorry to harp on that. I'm just thinking about it a lot. I asked, why were they marching now? And somebody said they wanted to wait until there was some kind of ceasefire where there wasn't, and because it's insensitive while your brothers are fighting on the front lines for you to be marching against going into the army. So that's like the height of insensitivity. But I would have loved that if that was true, and I think it is. I think that's the timing. I would have liked for that to have been articulated. I know this is maybe painful, but I want you to know what we planned this for now, because we know we were all attacked, and we were all the same people, and I don't know how to inspire that sentiment other than getting to know each other better.
So let's turn to the Creator and just say, like, we have a desire. We don't know how to do this. We don't know how to unite the Jewish people, but we need you to be with us, whatever you are, whatever people want to call you, that force that's been with us this whole time, that force that gave us the Torah. We need your help. We want to be your emissaries here. We want to spread your light here. And we're asking you to please help us unite the Jewish people so that we can help everybody and make this a dwelling place for you. Your house will be a house of prayer for all people. We need your help.
Beautiful. We do that before we do a mitzvah. We say L'Shem Yichud, for the sake of unity, and we ask Hashem, help us. We don't know exactly what we're doing here. We could use the help from on high. That's a beautiful thing.
I have a quote for you to read, if you don't mind. We always ask people to read from the sources, and I think there's no better source than the Book of Zohar. Very, I would say it's one of those last bastions, not very well understood, but you can still get a lot from it. The portion is specifically, if you want, it's called "Behold How Good and How Pleasant" from Acharei Mot. Okay.
Do you want me to read it, or
out loud? Yeah,
thank you. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to sit together. Shevat achim gam yachad. Beautiful.
Exactly.
These are the friends as they sit together, and they're not separated from each other. At first, they seem like people at war, wishing to kill one another. Then they return to being in brotherly love. The Creator says about them, "Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to also sit together." The word "also" comes to include the Shekhinah with them. Moreover, the Creator listens to their words, and He has contentment and delights with them, as it is written. Then those who feared the Creator spoke to one another, and the Creator listened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before Him. And you, the friends who are here, as you were in fondness and love before, henceforth you will also not part until the Creator rejoices with you and summons peace upon you. By your merit there will be peace in the world, and as it is written, for the sake of my brothers and my friends, let me say, let peace be in you. Whoa, there's so much here. So there's so much here. I mean, on one hand, this is teaching that Hashem needs to be part of this whole thing. So Seth, this goes back to your beautiful prayer, your tefillah that we daven and ask Hashem for help. We're not going to be able to get this without Hashem's help. We can't really do this on our own. We haven't figured out a way of doing this on our own just yet. And I love how it says here, the word "also" comes to include the Shekhinah, that we have to be at peace. And it sort of backs it up at the very end as well. It says that, for the sake of my brothers and my friends, let me say, let there be peace in you. This is probably happening, a lot of the turmoil that's going on in the world and between each other. Is, you can't have peace between two people if one person individually is within turmoil. And that's probably why it says, v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. You can't really love other people if you don't first love yourself. And that might be part of the problem here. There might be a lot of pain in people individually. And the last thing a person can do when they're in pain by themselves is to make peace with somebody else. On the other hand, it could be the biggest therapy. Could be the biggest thing in the world, because nothing helps a person in pain and in loss more than finding somebody else who's going through the same thing. Misery loves company, and we can really console each other, because every segment of the Jewish community has problems and issues, every part.
Exactly.
Nobody escapes it. And if we can kind of, deal with some of that pain by just, and not trying to solve it. It's not like, oh, I'm going to come together and the problem that I have now is going to be solved. But we know that half of therapy is just awareness and just feeling good that other people are experiencing this and are sensitive to it. That's an extraordinary way of us healing some of the rifts that we find within ourselves. And if we can somehow do this together, I'm thinking about my son, the one who I mentioned before was in the COVID hotel. And he was feeling such achdus, He does this through meditation. I'm wondering if when we get everybody together, we can get everybody to close their eyes and focus on something beyond. Like you said so beautifully, I forgot which one of you, whether it's you, Leo, or you, Seth, said that when you have turbulence, there's always going to be turbulence, that you need to fly the plane higher. So we almost need, not to avoid the real issues, but if we can get into that higher realm with each other, then
problems are smaller.
Oh yeah.
No, you just realize that there were not issues in the first place. That's the thing that it's hard for us to imagine.
It's very hard to imagine, because I'm thinking right now about the draft issue, and I'm thinking about the religious divide, and I'm thinking about before Yom Kippur that we opened up shop in Tel Aviv. I'm very proud. We have MG has its a site in Tel Aviv.
Oh, nice.
And thank you. Yeah, we moved a couple there that was with us on the west side here for 5 years, and it's doing beautifully. And Yom Kippur, we got this notice that we can't, if we're using a public space, we can't have the men and the women seated separately. I'm like, that would be stricken down as unconstitutional in the United States. It would be discrimination.
Well, they fixed it. I think they fixed it now.
Yeah, no, they did. But I'm like, all of this stuff is just, you almost have to like turn off all that noise. Yeah. Turn off the noise. Yeah, all that stuff exists. I'm not denying it. It's there. But we need to fly higher together, get above it, get into some shared space where we can literally hold each other's hands, meditate a little, sing a couple of songs, take a deep breath, and then come back to this stuff.
Most of it will melt away by now. Will have melted away. I guarantee it. You don't need to work so hard. The Creator just wants, you see, even in this quote from the Zohar, the Creator.
This is such a gorgeous piece from the Zohar. It's like
he just wants us to unite. That's the only thing you need to ask the Creator for help with. Everything else, what are you asking for, anyways? He gave you the problem. So what are you asking him to take it away? what are you? No, it's trying to turn our attention to the one thing that's missing, which is that we're not connected. But when we're connected, that's
connected and with him there with us.
Yeah, that's when he can reveal him. That's the Shekhinah that becomes.
And I think it can help heal some of our individual issues too.
Oh, completely.
Because if we have to wait to fix all those problems
before all those anxieties, all those traumas, all those things, when you're just in an ocean of love, it's disappears, it dissolves.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. I mean, look, a married couple is a good example. When they're in love, they each have their problems. They unite. They have a baby. They didn't solve all their problems before they had the baby. The baby just required them to rise to a higher place for the baby.
It's a great metaphor. And if you're a little too careful, you're never going to have the baby. You're a little too...
Yeah, exactly. We have to be more adventurous, more proud, hold our head high, connect to the root of this amazing group of people, because it really is way more than just morals and ethics. And I think we're on the right track. I feel like we have a great partner on this.
An incredible new friend.
Wow, I really would love to continue this. I mean that sincerely. And I'd love to... dream with you guys a bit. If there was any kind of forum that we could create for that. I have it at MGE to some degree, and I think that's one of the reasons for our success is that people don't feel judged, and there's just like a lot of love. And when you're feeling that love for each other, you just want to deepen it, and you want to deepen your connection to what's helping facilitate that. And I don't know if you ever want to do something. I'm all over this, man.
Yes, we're already we're on it. Our people will talk to your people, and then we'll talk to you more. First of all, we want to thank you for coming here.
It's my honor. It's really my honor.
Number two, wish you a lot of luck.
Buy the book Beyond the Incident.
Yeah, the book.
Beyond the Incident's the first book, but buy that too.
Okay.
The new one is called The Jewish Experience.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So good luck with the book as well. We'll put links to all of that stuff on the, it's going to be there on the bottom. Number three, we'll think of something we can do together, because I think we have to. And number four, you'll come here in a few months and we'll talk about how things are going. How's that?
That would be a great honor. So let's stay in touch.
Amazing. So,
thank you so much.
This is TJFUNCTION. This has been an amazing talk with Rabbi Mark Wildes. Follow him, check out all the links, leave a comment here because it helps, and spread this conversation. More people need to hear it. I'm sure it will only do good to them.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.